Today, 2 infographics from the Visual Capitalist website. What powered the world in 2022? And all global carbon dioxide emissions. Data sources in the video description. The authors of the first infographic indicate that coal is still the leading source of electricity generation in the world, accounting for 35% of power plant power generated. Second is natural gas, which produces 23% of electricity, and third is hydroelectricity, 15%. The infographic shows that the fourth source is nuclear power plants, responsible for almost 10% of the world's electricity. Wind energy generated 7%, solar panels 4.5%, biomass generated almost 3% of electricity, and crude oil generated 2.5%. Crude oil is the fuel from which a significant portion of electricity is generated on islands without other sources. Diesel fuel is quite easy to transport and store. Other sources, such as geothermal, generated less than 1% of the world's electricity. My attention was immediately drawn to the inclusion of hydroelectricity among non-renewable sources. That's what the authors of the data did, but it's a mistake. Hydroelectric power plants are the most popular renewable source of electricity in the world. The authors of the infographic do not mention why they did this, although there is a note at the bottom of the infographic about the change in classification. Hydroelectric power plants are a very stable source of generating electricity, which cannot be said about wind and solar energy. The latter must be stabilized in the network by the ability to quickly supply energy from other sources when the wind stops blowing or the sun stops shining. Then the best replacement source are gas and water power plants, which can be quickly started or shut down depending on needs. All renewables, including hydro, accounted for 29% of electricity in 2022. The green and red circles contain information about the percentage increase or decrease in production compared to the previous year. The largest increase was recorded in solar energy, almost 25%. Wind energy recorded 13.5% growth. These two renewable sources are definitely the most dynamic. Conventional sources, coal, natural gas as well as hydropower, increased by 1%. Nuclear power saw a decline of 4% and oil-based electricity generation fell by 2.5%. It should be noted that the installed capacity of a given power plant does not correspond to the power actually generated, especially in relation to renewable sources such as wind and solar. Onshore wind farms have an efficiency of between 20 and 40%, depending on location and weather conditions. This means that if a power plant has, for example, 10 megawatts installed, it will generate on average between 2 and 4 megawatts. Conventional sources, coal, natural gas as well as hydropower, increased by 1%. Nuclear power saw a decline of 4% and oil-based electricity generation fell by 2.5%. It should be noted that the installed capacity of a given power plant does not correspond to the power actually generated, especially in relation to renewable sources such as wind and solar. Onshore wind farms have an efficiency of between 20 and 40%, depending on location and weather conditions. This means that if a power plant has, for example, 10 megawatts installed, it will generate on average between 2 and 4 megawatts. Conventional sources are therefore not only more stable, but also more effective. Knowing this, we will notice that an increase of 1% in the case of conventional sources in terms of installed capacity is almost identical to the dozen or so percent added in renewable sources, apart from hydroelectric power plants, which are highly efficient like coal and natural gas. For some time now, the energy sector has been rated in terms of carbon dioxide emissions into the air. The more we talk about carbon dioxide, the less we talk about other emissions whose effects on the environment and human health are much more harmful than carbon dioxide, such as sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides and thousands of other substances generated in fuel combustion processes. Without entering into discussions about the basics of combating carbon dioxide emissions, I would like to show you an infographic which shows that reducing carbon dioxide emissions is a difficult goal to achieve. The European Union has the most ambitious plans to reduce carbon dioxide. Even if the European Union reduced emissions to zero, it would not make much difference. The EU's three largest emitters, Germany, Poland, and Italy, together account for just under 4% of global carbon dioxide emissions. Moreover, India today accounts for 7% of emissions, but the country's growth potential in terms of population is equivalent to that of China, which today emits a third of the world's carbon dioxide. China also has the world's largest installed wind and solar power capacity. I will not mention here the economic development projections of other countries to note that reducing carbon dioxide emissions on a global scale is impossible in the near future. Subscribe to this channel to receive a regular dose of knowledge.